Hello and welcome to a skill of the week for the 6th graders today. They've been learning about Aboriginal Dreaming stories, and we are kind of Americanizing it just slightly because of the story that we're going to put behind it. We're going to put a lot of Aboriginal elements into it, but then we're going to Americanize it with the story at the end. So remember, we've been talking about Aboriginal Dreaming stories being filled with a lesson of some sort. Well, our Aboriginal Dreaming story is going to have an animal in it. Okay, so I have a couple of examples here. I have a lizard. I haven't put all of the details on it yet, and I've done the dot work on it. Okay, remember that we saw a bunch of authentic Aboriginal Dreaming stories, and they use a stick or a small paintbrush to put on the dots. Well, we're going to use a Q-tip, so it'll be easier. But I want you to notice how the dots are supposed to be placed. Try to make your dots so that they don't touch, and yet they are close together. You are also going to need to put on at least 2 symbols from the symbol worksheet that I'm going to give you. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about how your animal is going to tie in with your symbols in your story. So I have another one that's an example here that uses an emu. Okay, this one isn't quite done yet, but it does have a couple of the symbols, okay, the wagal snake and the traveling picture. So think about, okay, how could I use my symbols along with my animal to create my story that has a lesson to it? And remember, in our lessons, they're kind of like Aesop's fables. So the animals can talk if you want them to. They can have almost human personalities if you want them to go along with your story. So think about that. So the one that I'm going to demonstrate for you so that you understand how to paint is the one that I used with the echidna. I used 3 symbols. Now remember, I said you only have to use 2. That's a minimum. You can use more if it works for your picture. Now you see I messed up right here and accidentally spilled some paint. So I have a big blob there. I could fix that, but I've got cream colored paint paper, so it'd be kind of hard. I could use cream colored paint to paint that back over. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm going to show you how to put the dots on your picture. So I'm going to set that. Okay, and I'm just going to use a piece of cardboard to put my paint on. Okay, and I'm going to use the little Anita's acrylics that I have back in the little tubs, and you can select from a whole bunch of different colors. A little will go a long ways for this, so you'll only need a little dollop of paint, not very much at all. And when you go to paint, I like to keep my arm completely out of it if possible. So if you need to turn your painting away so that your hand is sitting in a clear area, I would highly recommend that. So just get enough paint on the end of your Q-tip to create a circle, and you're going to slowly get your dots. You probably can put 2 or 3 dots at a time before having to dip back into the paint, but you want to press down so that it creates a nice circle. So right now I'm going 3, and then I'm just slightly dipping into the paint. I'm not gushing the paint into my my Q-tip so that it's a big mess. Okay, I'm turning it just so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm just working along the edge. Try not to overlap your symbols. And by the way, when I did my symbols, I selected an animal, drew it on there in pencil. And by the way, this is all dry, so I'm not worrying about it. I could flip it around and do it this way, and maybe you'll see it better, I don't know. But that way I keep my hand out of anything there that's already done. Anyway, I selected my animal, drew it on there in pencil, and then outlined it with black heavy marker. That way it stands out, and it's a little easier than trying to paint the outline. And then decided on my color scheme. Okay, on the echidna, as you can tell, I only used a couple of little marks on there to indicate his spines. You don't have to make your animal totally exactly like a real animal. Because remember the Aboriginal dreaming stories that we looked at? The animals sometimes had designs and symbols and patterns and things like that inside of them. So that's something that you can do to make your animal stand out a little bit more, or maybe it goes with your story. So while you're painting this, you can be thinking about what kind of story do you want to have to go along with your picture. And you really want to kind of think that out ahead of time, but really you can be thinking about telling the story in your head while you're doing the painting, because really the painting doesn't take much thought. It just takes patience and making sure that you are keeping your dots spaced apart so they aren't overlapping and they aren't touching, and yet they're close together. You don't want to have spots that are like that. They're too far apart, okay? You want to make sure that they're close, like the dots that we saw on the original. Okay, so my Q-tip is breaking down a little bit, and I'm starting to get areas that don't look very circular. So I'm kind of rolling the Q-tip in my paint to kind of round that out a little bit. And if you get too much fuzz around the outside, you can flip your Q-tip and start working on the other side. Okay, that might help, because it does become hard. This particular Q-tip has a weird end, so it's kind of gushy. But anyway, as I was saying, thinking about your story, I just started thinking about, because I used so many of the symbols that they use for food, like the witchetty grub, okay, the witchetty grub that's up here, and the quandon and the honey ant, I thought, okay, what if this echidna was going around and he was eating all the food in the area, kind of being a glutton, getting real fat and lazy, and something came along and ate him, like a snake or something. And he couldn't get away because he had been so gluttonous that he got too fat. Think about what the moral of that story could be, what the lesson behind that could be. You know, it could be, don't be a glutton, or share the food. You know, I probably put more detail into it, but that could be the underlying thought process to the story. Okay, so that's what I've gotten so far, but you can see it's pretty simple, and maybe he's walking along the edge of the water, you know, because this is blue at the bottom, and I've got some green and I've got some orange and some yellow. So think about your total image, what kind of story you want that image to tell, and then of course after you get done with your painting, you're going to do your writing. So we will write those stories, and we'll photograph your picture and put it up with the story into artsonia.com, just like we do all of our other pictures. Okay, so be thinking about your focal point, which is your animal. It's going to be large. Your minimum of 2 symbols from the symbols page that you're going to get handed out, and painting your dots close together but not touching or overlapping. All right, thank you. See you later.